I'm Grandmaster Erwin Lamy, on duty here for ChessCity.com. In this video I'm going to be presenting you the game between Magnus Carlsen and Shakhriyar Mamedyarov from the first round of the Gashimov Memorial. Let's get straight to it. After d4, d5, c4, c6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, e6, we have a Slav, semi-Slav on the board, bishop g5. Mamedyarov chose the move knight bd7. That's interesting. I mean, at this point there are many sharp alternatives. D takes c4, leading to the famous Botvinnik variation. h6, which has been called the Moscow variation, are both much sharper alternatives. But Mamedyarov chooses the somewhat more restrained knight bd7, which has become back in fashion as of late. e3. Queen a5, and it's interesting because in this particular variation Magnus Carlsen has quite a lot of experience himself with both colors. First of all, there was this famous rapid game against Kasparov 10 years ago already, in 2004 in Reykjavik, where Magnus Carlsen chose knight d2 and managed to pose Kasparov quite a lot of problems before they eventually drew. And with black, he used the variation himself last year in the candidates tournament, when he managed to qualify and eventually beat Vishy Anand for the world title. He used it in that candidates tournament against Boris Gelfand, and that we are still following that game. B takes bishop a3. Obviously, it's nice to castle. To develop while attacking a rook, and thereby also preparing to castle. Rook c2, b6. The bishop also has a duty to do on a6, and it's nice to exchange this bishop, which potentially could get really strong on d3. Bishop e2, and it's very interesting to note that Gelfand chose bishop d3 against Carlsen. And after bishop a6, castle, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, castle. Gelfand played e4. Carlsen replied rook e8. Gelfand played e5. Now this move is very interesting, and I'm going to explain it because it's going to be quite important in the current game as well. This move e5, it's very double-edged. Let's say that in an ideal world, if black manages to play c5, and let's say white does nothing, which of course is really all just a dream. Let's say white really does nothing, and black manages to, let's just say, get a knight to d5. Then he brings his bishop back to safety. He kicks the bishop back. Of course, this is all not very relevant, but I'm just trying to make a point here. Now, this would be a scenario that black is dreaming of. Here, white is stuck with these ugly pawns, especially the d4 pawn can become a target. The d5 knight is beautifully placed. White has a nice, has a nice pawn majority on the queen side, which may at some point will roll forward, and black has a very serious advantage here. Of course, this is not at all the point behind Gelfand's move e5. He's not going to let this happen. What he's trying to do, first of all, is saying, well, this knight for the moment has absolutely no squares. Then, in an ideal world, he wants to use this extra space that he has, because of course these pawns on d4 and e5, they're not just on the wrong square, so to say, they're also taking up a lot of space. And white could, for example, use the e4 square to bring a knight over, either to d6 or to f6. They could also use the e file to bring a rook in, to use it for the queen. So the e4 square is a very nice square to have when launching an attack on the king here, and that's really what white is after. He slowly wants to create some initiative against the king. Let's go back to the game, because Carlsen plays bishop e2 here, bishop a6, castle, castle, Sorry, bishop takes e2, queen takes e2, castle. e4. As you can see, Carlsen follows in the footsteps of Gelfand, with a small exception that the queen is on e2 here. Rook ac8, e5. And now this is an interesting moment, because as you can see, Carlsen chooses exactly the same plan as Gelfand, with the only difference being the queen on e2. Now, what could be the point of this? Of course, Carlsen made a thorough study of his game against Gelfand, and he came with the idea that the queen is better placed on e2, and we will see why very soon. Here, Mamedyarov decided on queen a4. Now, it's very interesting to see what would happen if black were to choose h6. I'm thinking that here Carlsen was planning to go bishop f4. The idea being that if again c5, white obviously doesn't want to allow black too much of an easy life by trading on d4, maybe also trading down the c file. Let's say a move like h3. It's a lot of what we have discussed before. You don't want to give black too much of an easy life, because then this weakness might really tell in time. Now, in this particular position, I think Carlsen prepared a very interesting move, d4, d5. And the point being that after e takes d5, he wanted to continue knight h4, and this is really strong. You can see already the nice little green arrows that I made in preparation for this little video. The g7, well, once the knight comes to f5, the queen comes to g4, the knight on d7 is immediately hanging, but most importantly, that king on g8 is not going to have a very easy life. Note also that the bishop on f4 is ready to join the attack if needed. So here black's especially, well, what is especially telling here is the position of the black queen on a5, completely out of play and completely unable to help the king. So black's forces are completely disorganized here. The bishop on a3 is out of play. The knight on d7 has no squares to go to. So it's not very surprising that white is able to launch a deadly attack here. But this is very important, because if black cannot free himself with h6 and c5, it means that he will be cramped for the next couple of moves. Basically, he cannot free his position. He really needs to get this c6, c5 push in. In the game, he chose queen a4. Carlsen plays c4, which is also very important, because now in the future he'll be ready to face the move c5 with d5. And well, of course, such a transition in the center would be something that white can only dream of. Not to mention that also in this particular position, after h6, bishop f4, c5, there's again the same trick, d5, e takes d5. Now, of course, c takes d5 would hang the bishop. But the same knight h4 applies here too. The knight is coming to f5, the queen is going to g4, just as in the previous variation. And the threats are really dangerous. It's not very surprising that Mamedyarov had no intention of going for this. He played rook f8. Carlsen improves his position with rook d1. And here c5 was played. A good moment. And also it makes clear why Mamedyarov chose to go rook f8. Because after d5, e takes d5, rook takes d5. Because here c takes d5, I am guessing that a move like, let's say h6, could be annoying, because, of course, these pawns, they look very mighty. At the same time, they are a bit loose at the moment, especially the e5 knight, for example, after bishop moves, let's say, let's say bishop h4, there could already be moves like knight takes e5. The idea being that knight takes e5 would allow queen takes h4, and with that knight still pinned, this does look very bad for white. And if h4 is not available, then where else to go? Bishop e3, for example, would immediately drop the e5 pawn. Bishop d2 is a little bit in the way. Bishop c1 looks a bit odd. So in this particular position, white would like to have a few extra moves to stabilize the center and to claim a clear advantage, but he simply doesn't have the time. And that's why Carlsen recaptured on d5 with the rook. And after knight f8, continued with h4. Another very interesting moment. So, given the chance, white will most certainly push his pawn forward, creating some further weaknesses on the queen side, king side, I should say. In the meantime, he is firmly in control of the d-file, and black's position is pretty cramped, and I think that Carlsen must have been quite happy with his position at this point. h6, bishop e3, knight g6, and this is the real clear mistake at this point. Of course, as I said, Mamedyarov probably felt at this point that the opening did not go his way at all, but in this particular position, he definitely had to oppose white on the d-file. He definitely had to be fighting for the d-file at this point with rook c d8. The point is that after, for example, rook c d2, we will see something that I've shown also in the previous line. Black is ready to take on d5 here, because after c takes d5, which again looks really beautiful, the 2 pawns here, but after queen e4, I'm actually going to make that move, queen e4, it turns out that that center, again, it's not as stable as white would like. Black knight is ready to jump into g6, attacking both e5 and h4, and white is a long way from stabilizing here. Another move would be even the immediate line, which may be even better than queen e4, what I suggested. Another move is queen d3 instead of rook d2. And here rook d7 is a very good move, because here it's very interesting that in this particular position, rook takes d5, c takes d5, knight d7, rook c4. Black wouldn't be in time to create counterplay against the center. So as you can see, it's a very subtle position. Here after queen b5, bishop takes h6 is a very strong blow. The point being that if g takes h6, rook g4 is not only check, but it also suddenly clears the road for the white queen to take on b5, to take its counterpart on b5. So in this particular position, rook takes d5 is not good, but black has a good alternative in rook d7. And the idea, of course, simply being to double on the d-file. Let's say rook d2, rook d8. And as I said, I would definitely prefer the white position. I think that black is under quite serious pressure here, but at least he has his forces on the d-file. He's trying to oppose white here, and it's not that easy for white to make progress here. The game continuation definitely didn't solve his problems. Queen d3 is what Magnus played. Very strong move, reassuring the control of the d8 square and therefore the d-file. Carlsen, Mamedyarov, I should say, played rook e6, h5, knight e7, and actually at this point, in just a matter of 3 moves, black's position is already lost. And it's interesting to note that Carlsen did not find the best way to play here. He played rook d6. And I think this is quite easy to explain. But first I will show you the line which was definitely preferable. Carlsen had at his disposal rook d8 check. Of course, the rook has to be taken. Queen takes d8, king h7. And now simply very strong rook d2. And the idea is very simple. if white is allowed to make another move, he plays queen f8. And then if he's allowed to make another move, he's going to go rook d8. And the mate on h8 will be simply unstoppable. Note how useful this pawn on h5 is, taking away the last square of the king. And this is a very lethal threat. And if black manages to parry this threat, then there's also the very annoying threat of rook d7, which simply would be picking up the e7 knight. So very serious threats in this position. And just a simple variation, bishop c1, rook d7, bishop takes c3, f takes c3, queen takes a2. Now I could imagine that Carlsen saw this position and felt that after rook takes e7, rook takes e7, queen takes e7, queen takes c4, queen takes a7, b5, there would be still some work to do. And this is true because those queenside pawns of black are not that bad. I do feel that the position should be technically winning for white. I think queen a6 is a nice move to start with, just to pin that b5 pawn, so to hinder black from pushing yet further. But I do understand that Carlsen didn't feel like getting into this kind of complications. I'm sure though, had he seen the move queen f8 in this position, he would have gone for it, because now after queen b1 check, king f2, queen f5, sorry, queen c2 check, rook d2, queen f5, rook d8, queen takes h5. It looks like black is just in time, because after queen h8 he can now run away with king g6. But there's a very strong move g3. This is just lethal, as white is preparing knight h4, again taking away the g6 square, and now again it's a mating attack, and there's nothing that black can do against it. Basically this was a forced win, but as I said, far from easy. And I feel that at this point Carlsen was just still in the mode of strengthening his position. Already he felt that his position is overwhelming, and he saw no need to go into this kind of complication mode. He just wanted to keep things clear, and I must say that he managed superbly in doing so. He went rook d6, bishop b4. I'm guessing that this is aimed at rook d2 most of all, but rook c1 is a perfectly reasonable way of rerouting the rook to d1 anyway. Rook e8. Yeah, it should be noted that rook d8 check followed by an exchange on d8. Let's say if black were to play a6 here, then rook d8 check, rook takes d8, queen takes d8, king h7, queen f8 would already be decisive, because queen takes f7 is simply impossible to stop. So that's already a very serious threat. And for example, if the queen takes a2, this would already be decisive. That's why Mamedyarov chose rook e8 and rook takes e6, f takes e6, knight h4. As you see, Magnus is simply improving his position. There's really nothing that black can do at this point. Note how bad the bishop on b4 is, completely out of play, and how very nicely white managed to fix the structure. Excuse me, on the king side. He's now preparing a king side initiative, starting with knight g6. Also, all kinds of sacrifices are looming, of course, with the queen so far out of play. Queen c6, a3, bishop a5, rook d1. Note how it's just small moves that are making the difference here. Carlsen is not in any rush. He's taking the d file, and there's little that black can do to oppose it. Queen c7, knight g6. There was also nothing wrong with simply playing f4, but it's a matter of taste at this point. What I love about this game is that without making any tricks, without any trickery, with just logical move, just improving his position, Magnus is completely dominating at this point. Knight g6 is what he chose. Knight takes g6, queen takes g6, queen f7. And once again, a very interesting moment, because if it would be black to move, he would most probably play bishop c3 and trying to get somehow the bishop to do something good here, because on a5 it's of course merely a pawn. So Carlsen just gently plays rook d3, once again reminding black that his bishop is miserable on a5. Mamedyarov played a6, well, obviously intending to play b5, not something that Magnus was ready to allow. Rook f8. I would like to show you the consequences of queen takes g6, h takes g6, king f8. And this position is so lost that even the rook and the bishop endgame is winning completely. So let's say rook d7, rook e7, takes, and g4. Now, first of all, it's important to note that although black has an extra pawn on the queen side, there's really nothing he can do with it, because the move b6, b5 is out of the question. It would merely lose a pawn. Black can also not prepare this advance, because after king d7 they would always follow bishop takes h6, and if the g takes h6, g7, as you've all learned from Robert Riss' endgame course here on chesscity.com, the king is now no longer in the square of the pawn and is therefore not in time to stop queening. So basically black has to sit and wait here, and that's not going to end well. Bishop c3, f4. I'm just going to show you a simple variation. White is slowly improving his position. King to e4. Black has nothing to do but wait. Now bishop h4, and it's really all rather simple. Let's say bishop a5, bishop a5, f5, and those pawns, they are rolling, and there's really nothing that black can do to oppose this. So rather easy win. So if all the endgames are lost, that means that it's very difficult for black to find any kind of savior. He cannot exchange any pieces, but at the same time he would like to relieve the pressure. So not only is he strategically lost, there's also basically no plan of savior at this point. Carlsen improved his position further with g4, queen e8, and rook d6. Now it's obvious. I can understand Mamedyarov's next move, queen takes a4. He's trying desperately somehow to get counterplay, but after queen takes e6, king h8, bishop takes h6, very carefully calculated blow. Carlsen is now really going in finishing mode. Queen a1 check, king g2, rook takes f2. Really the only chance, because of course, just briefly we can see that king g8. Now let's see what would be the fastest way of mating. I think the fastest way would be queen g5 check. Now going back to the h file would allow a mate with rook h6. So king f7, king f7, rook d7 check. And now either king e6, or we can choose between a rook or queen. It's maybe more elegant to move to mate with the rook, and if king e8, then we can choose between e7 or d8. I'll leave the choice to you. Rook takes f2, king takes f2 is an attempt of black, of Mamedyarov, to set up some kind of perpetual check, but at this point Magnus has carefully calculated that he can run out of the checks, as we will see right now. Rook takes e2, he decided to give back some material. G takes h6, and here comes the finishing touch. Queen e8 check, king g7, queen e7 check, and black resigned. Why did he resign? Because after king g8, white goes king g6. Now mate is threatened, well, on the back rank and on g7. So let's give a little check, let's say on d3. But now white goes king takes h6, again renewing the threat on both e8 and g7. So black has to give another check. White now plays g4, g5, shielding his king from any further checks, and basically mate is unavoidable. And this is of course something that Mamedyarov realized, and therefore he resigned. So this was indeed a very smooth victory for Magnus Carlsen, who was just using a normal means of improving his position, not rushing. Very important point to note in this game. There was absolutely no rush in his play, and this was the start of a very interesting tournament. Of course, he won his first 2 games. This was the first round, and in the next video I'll be presenting you one of his losses further on in the tournament. So keep an eye out for that, because that's going to be very interesting as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, remarks, anything, let me know, and I will definitely reply to you as soon as I can. Thank you very much for watching, and keep improving your chess on chessity.com. Thank you.